Well, this morning, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to speak to our graduates today. We're blessed today to have a couple handsome young men and a beautiful young lady getting graduating this week, and we're thankful for that. And so for Blake and Grant and Laney, I want to be speaking to you this morning. The rest of y'all can listen in. Is that all right? All right. So I'm going to share with you this morning 8 principles for success. It's kind of something that, I wish somebody would have told me when I was graduating or when I left high school. So if you've got your notes this morning, I'm going to go through these 8 principles of success, and there's probably more that we could have used, but I chose these 8 because I think they're very important, because you're going to take a major step, and are you excited? Are you guys excited to be leaving high school? Yeah? All right. I know for me, I was so ready to get rid of school. I mean, I thought I was done with school, and I was glad for that. Okay, the first point this morning is work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. You may think school is finished, and you're saying, hallelujah, but I guarantee you, I've learned a lot more after I left school than I ever learned in school. All right? Your learning is just beginning. All right? You're just getting started. What you have in your hands now is the tools to learn anything you want to learn. Okay? As you've gone through school, they have taught you how to learn, how to use those tools to learn things that you need to learn in life. And I understand some of you, maybe all of you will be going to college, but you'll have to take responsibility for your learning from now on. Okay, you may not have mom and dad there to tell you, hey, you got to get up and go to school today. You might have to make some of those decisions on your own, and you might have to do that. You'll have to take responsibility for that. Proverbs 1:5 says, "Let the wise listen and add to their learning." Let the wise listen and add to their learning. So you want to be wise, and I don't think he's talking about just as you're going to school for those first 12, 13 years, whatever. I think he's talking about a lifelong process to continue to add to your learning. So how do you do that? A couple quick things of how do you do that. First of all, you read. You read. Someone said, he who does not read is no better off than he who cannot read. Okay? And I hear people say, well, I don't like to read. I don't want to read. There's one way to get over that. Read. Okay? But you show me a successful person, I will show you a person who reads. Read things, read biographies, read publications that pertain to whatever it is that you decide to do in life, your area of interest. But it's a learning process, and one of the ways we learn is through reading, through discovering what other people know, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is learn from your own experiences. You will make mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. There's an old saying that goes like this: dog bites me once, shame on the dog. Dog bites me twice, shame on me, okay? And the principle is, you will make mistakes. Things will happen to you, but don't make the same mistakes again. Learn from your mistakes and learn to do things differently. Life will give you some hard lessons. If you don't learn from those lessons, it will repeat until you do. A reporter was interviewing a very successful businessman, and he asked him, how did you become so successful? He said, by making good decisions. Well, the reporter said, well, how did you know how to make those good decisions? Well, from my experience, he said. Well, where did you get all that experience? By making bad decisions, he said. And that's so true in life. We will make some bad decisions in life. We will mess up, but learn from those, call them experience, and learn to do something different the next time. So learn from your own experience. The next thing is learn from other people. Learn from other people. Proverbs 21:11 says, a wise person learns from instruction. You know, the best experiences is to learn from someone else's experiences. The best experience is someone else's. Find a field of work that you want to spend your life doing. Then find the most successful person in that field of work and learn from them. I know when we started the church, I didn't know how to start a church. I didn't know what to do. And so I found the best, the largest, successful biblical teaching church that I could find, Saddleback Church in California. And for, I think, 5 years, every summer I went to their pastor's conference. And I spent several days learning from them and learning. I went to Chicago to Harvest Bible Chapel, and I learned from them. We've been to Gateway, and we learned from them. We learned from someone who's doing it better than we are. Okay, you need to do that as well as you, whatever area that you strike out on in life, learn from someone who's doing it better than what you're doing. Okay, learn from somebody else's experience. And then, finally, work on your attitude. Attitude is everything, all right? I'd rather hire someone with a good attitude and very little skill than someone who has great skill, is highly skilled, but has a bad attitude. You can always teach skill, but a good attitude will go a long way. Someone said your attitude will determine your altitude. You will never rise above the level of your attitude. So develop a good attitude. The second thing this morning is choose to live a life of health. Not just physical. You know, you are a three-dimensional person. Body, soul, and spirit. 1 Timothy 4:3 says, physical exercise has some value, but spiritual exercise is much more important, for it promises a reward in both this life and the next. By studying God's Word, the source of all truth, a healthy life is a balanced life. A healthy life is a balanced life. There's several areas, and think about your life as a giant wheel. And this giant wheel has different spokes on it. And these spokes are represented by these different areas in your life, these 5 different areas in your life. There's the work area of your life. There's the recreation area of your life. There's the personal area of your life. And there's the family area of your life. And then there's the spiritual area of your life. If those are all in balance, the wheel turns smoothly and freely, and your life goes pretty good. But if you get out of balance, your total focus is totally on your work, and you're out of balance in that area, and you're leaving your spiritual life alone, and you're not paying attention to your spiritual life, or you're not paying attention to your family life, to your relationships. All of a sudden, you're out of balance, and the wheel gets bumpy, and life gets rough because you're out of balance. So remember that as you go through life, to keep things in balance, keep things in perspective, and keep all those spokes the same length to where you're working on all of those at the same time, and you're not out of balance in one area of your life. Some people become out of balance. All they want to do is recreation. And just recreation all the time, and they neglect their work life, and all of a sudden they find themselves without a job or find themselves broke, okay? So they're out of balance in that area. You got to do them all. You got to have them all in perspective. Same way with spiritual and family and your personal life. The third thing this morning is make the most of relationships. You know, the relationships can be the best thing in your life, or they can be the worst thing in your life. Don't take your relationships for granted. You know, the golden rule is so important. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Spend time with the people you love. Philippians 2:5 says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Now think about, how did Jesus build relationships? What did Jesus do? Think about, you know, the time he took to sit with Mary and Martha, to go to their home and have dinner with them. The time he took, even though he was busy and there were huge crowds that demanded his attention, he took the time to pull away many times and just spend some time with his disciples, to build those relationships. You can't build great relationships with everybody, but there are some core people that you can build relationships with and do that. Build those relationships. Think about how Christ demonstrated that for us. Make those great relationships. And then the fourth thing this morning is, write down some goals. Decide where you want to be. Somebody said that if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time. Aim at something. Maybe even write a bucket list. Some things that you want to do before you kick the bucket. Is basically what that means. And I think back over the years, I've been able to do some pretty neat stuff. Some stuff that I wanted to do one time, like skydiving. I've done that one time. That's enough. I probably won't do that again. But it was one of those things that I wanted to experience that, And to jump out of a perfectly good airplane at 10,000 feet is nuts. But it was fun. I went scuba diving in the Atlantic Ocean, or the Caribbean, I guess it was. And I've done that. I probably won't do it again. But that was a neat experience to be able to do that. My dream was to have a mission project in a third world country, and we've been able to do that in Nicaragua, and that's been a blessing. For years and years, I dreamt about going to Hawaii, and finally that came to pass, and I think it kind of became a habit. I think we've been there 7 times. But have something that you want to work for. Have some goals in life. Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. A life without goals is aimless wandering. Goals help you focus on what is important. You should have some long-term goals. What are my lifetime goals? And then, break it down into maybe a 5-year goal and maybe a 1-year goal, a 1-week goal, a 1-day goal. And, break those down into what are you doing? What do you want to accomplish in life? Where do you want to go? And then number 5, going right along with that, is manage your time wisely. All of us get exactly the same amount of time. 24 hours a day, 168 hours a week. What you choose to do with your time will determine your outcome. I love this poem by Linda Ellis. You may have heard me share it before, called The Dash. I read of a reverend who stood to speak at the funeral of his friend. He referred to the dates on her tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of her birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years, for that dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved her know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left. You could be at dash mid-range. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? Something to think about. That little dash on your tombstone is going to represent everything about your life. Everything about your life. Ecclesiastes 8:12 says, although a wicked person who commits 100 crimes may live a long time, I know that it will get will go better with those who fear God, who are reverent before him. The other day, a friend of mine said to me, I just don't understand it. I don't understand. I see wicked, evil people who seem to skate through life and everything goes good for them. And then I see good people, honest people, who have trouble in their life. Maybe they have cancer. They have things fall apart for them. He said, I just don't understand it. And how do you explain that? How do you respond to that? It's tough. It's tough. But God doesn't promise us a bed of roses, but he does promise to be with us, to help us cope through the difficult circumstances. Use your time wisely. Once that minute is gone, you will never get it back. Like I said, we all have the same amount of time. We all have 24 hours a day, 168 hours a week. It's what we do with that time that will make the difference in our lives. The next thing is surround yourself with the best people. The best people. Choose your friends very carefully. Tell me your 3 closest friends and I'll tell you what you're becoming. All right? Look at your three best friends. Are those the people that you want to be? If they're not, then maybe it's time to move on. The Bible has a lot to say about that. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. For some reason, it always seems to go downhill whenever we hang around bad people. Proverbs 22 says, do not make friends with a hot-tempered man. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn his ways and get yourself ensnared. So be careful how you choose your friends. Proverbs 12:26 says, the righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. Be careful how you choose your friends. Choose your friends wisely. Surround yourself with the best people. Number 7, always be aware that you are influencing others. Always be aware that what you do has an influence on other people. Treat others with respect. You never know how your smallest act of kindness will affect someone else's life. See, somebody else needs you, whether you realize it or not. Somebody else is following you, whether you realize it or not. Let me illustrate. There's a guy you've probably never heard of. His name is Norman Ernest Borlaug. He's credited with saving over 1 billion people from starvation. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970 in recognition for his contributions to world peace for increased food supply. In Mexico, he developed a high-yielding, disease-resistant wheat variety that, combined with modern production techniques, dramatically increased the world food supply. So although Norman Ernest Borlaug gets the credit for saving over 1 billion people from starvation, I suggest you also consider Henry Wallace. See, in 1933, Henry Wallace became the United States Secretary of Agriculture under President Franklin Roosevelt. In 1940, he became the vice president. After the 1940 election, he went on vacation to Mexico. While he was there, he noticed that although corn was a very important part of the Mexican diet, their corn yields lagged far behind those of the United States. He created experimental stations in Mexico to develop improved corn varieties. Borlaug was one of the first scientists to join the station that he created. So perhaps the credit should go to Henry Wallace for saving the lives of 1 billion people. Or perhaps we should consider George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver became one of the nation's greatest educators and agricultural researchers. He discovered over 300 uses for peanuts and hundreds more uses for soybeans, pecans, and sweet potatoes. Carver attended Iowa State University and would take long walks into the surrounding fields, studying plants and doing research. On some of these walks, he would take a little friend with him, the 6-year-old son of a dairy science professor. At age 11, that boy started doing experiments with different varieties of corn. That boy's name was Henry Wallace. So perhaps the credit for saving 1 billion people should go to George Washington Carver. Or perhaps we should consider Etta Mae Budd. She taught at Simpson College in Indianola. There was a student in her art classes who loved to paint pictures of plants and flowers. He was also a good gardener. And Etta Mae helped him find gardening jobs in the area. She took this young man aside and encouraged him to not just paint plants, but to study them. She offered to go with him to Iowa State University, where her father was a professor, and help him enroll. That young man was George Washington Carver. So perhaps credit for saving 1 billion people should go to Etta Mae Budd, who encouraged George Washington Carver to study plants, who influenced Henry Wallace, who set up research stations in Mexico where Bulag did his research. Or perhaps we should consider a German farmer during the Civil War. Night riders kidnapped a slave woman and her sickly boy from the farmer. The farmer offered his fastest racehorse to his neighbor for their safe return. The neighbor returned with only the boy. The farmer and his wife nursed the boy to health. They raised him and educated him as if he were their own. The boy, George Washington Carver. The farmer and his wife, Moses Susan Carver. So maybe the credit for saving billions of people from starvation should go to Moses and Susan Carver, who raised George Washington Carver, who influenced Henry Wallace, who set up research stations in Mexico, where Norman Ernest Bulag did his research and came up with high-yielding wheat varieties that saved millions from starvation. Do you get the point? You never know the little thing that you do that might affect something way down the road. Somebody is watching you. You may think that you're doing something very insignificant, but you're influencing people all the time. I'll never forget when Megan was born, and we were in the hospital, and she, most normal kids, you stick a bottle in their mouth and they start sucking right away. It's just a normal thing that they do. But Megan wasn't like that. She was a little contrary. Imagine that. So she would just lay there and wouldn't suck. And there was one nurse that spent hours rocking this little girl and pushing her little chin up to try to get her to suck that bottle, finally getting half an ounce into her, and then an ounce. And I believe today, if it weren't for that nurse, Megan wouldn't have made it. Her name was Pam O'Neill. We became good friends. They came to our house. We went to their house. They've since moved to Kansas City. But we became good friends because of that extra thing that she did, that extra mile that she went. I remember my first trip to Nicaragua. I met a young man that from the Dominican Republic. This young man was leading teams. He was our interpreter when we went down there. And he was from the Dominican Republic originally. And I remember he told me, he said, if it weren't for compassion, if it weren't for somebody sponsoring me into this program, I'd be in a gutter somewhere. That young man today is married, has a beautiful family, has gone back to the Dominican Republic, is leading mission teams in the Dominican Republic, all because somebody gave that $38 a month to sponsor that child. You never know who you're influencing as you go through life. My final point this morning is leave a legacy. Leave a legacy. You know, we're like breezes that blow in the wind. Our life is short, you know. And you guys are young, 18? You're thinking, man, 60 is a long way off. I'm getting close to that, and I'm looking back and thinking, man, 18 was just a couple weeks ago, wasn't it? I mean, that wasn't that long ago. Life flies, and, I remember the older people used to say that, as you get older, time goes faster, and I thought, yeah, right. It's true, right? All you old people, you believe it? Yeah. It does go faster, and it gets to the point where you understand this verse in Psalm 103. Our days on earth are like grass, like wildflowers. We bloom and die. The wind blows and we are gone, as though we had never been here. But the love of the Lord remains forever with those who fear him. His salvation extends to the children's children, of those who are faithful to his covenant, of those who obey his commandments. It's so true. It's our lives are a fleeting time, and will soon be over. But you can make a difference while you're here. You can leave a legacy. Brother Steve introduced me to this book here a while back. It's called On This Day, and it's 365 readings, one for every day, and something significant that happened in Christian history on this particular day. And the one for today, I just want to read to you the one for today. It's for May the 21st. It's about a time back, if you just to set the stage a little bit. It's a time back in 1685. It's a time of the Reformation. It's the time of when in Europe people couldn't worship freely like we do here. Basically, the state ran the church. It was a Catholic church. The state ran the church, and basically you did what the state said, or you would be persecuted. Well, there was a guy called Isaac Watts. Isaac Watts is called the father of the English hymns. He wrote such classics as O God, Our Help in the Ages Past, Joy to the World, At the Cross, and 600 others. He was a small, odd man whose life was shaped by his father, Isaac Sr. The elder Watts was repeatedly imprisoned for his nonconformist beliefs. So the elder Watts believed, more like we do, that salvation is through Jesus Christ. It's not, you don't go through the priest, you go straight to Jesus Christ, and so forth. So he was put in prison for it. On May 21st, 1685, he wrote this letter to his family from prison, addressing his comments especially to 11-year-old Isaac. We must endeavor by patient waiting to submit to his will without murmuring, and not to think amiss of his chastening us, knowing that all his works are the products of infinite wisdom. Watts then gave several charges to his son. Okay, so he's got a list of several things that he wanted to tell his son, and I want to tell you guys this morning, all right? He said, frequently read the Holy Scriptures, and that not as a task, but as a delight. Understand the sinful state and begin betimes to be a praying Christian, remembering that prayer is the best weapon of a saint's defense. Remember the hope of salvation founded on Jesus Christ. Keep perpetually in mind that God is our Creator and serve Him with a willing mind. Worship God in God's own way, that is, according to the rules in the gospel and not according to the inventions or traditions of men. Do not entertain in your heart any popish doctrines, in other words, the Catholic doctrines, particularly that of praying to the saints or to the Virgin Mary or any other mere creature. Pray instead that God will give you knowledge of His truth, for it is a very dangerous time that you are like to live in. Do not entertain hard thoughts of God or of His ways because His people are persecuted. For Jesus Christ Himself was persecuted to death by wicked men for preaching the truth and doing good. Be dutiful and obedient to all superiors, to your grandfather, your grandmothers, in all special manner to your mother. All right? Good advice. Watts was soon afterward released from prison and lived to be 85. It was he who planted the music of the gospel in his son's heart and who encouraged him to pursue it. Good advice for all of us, even today, for many years later, 400 years later. Determine, how will you leave a legacy in the world? When you're gone, what will people say about your dash? You know, people won't talk about how much money you made, the car you drove, the house you lived in. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. There's nothing wrong with having a nice car, having a nice house, or any of those things. But you will be remembered for the lives that you've touched. You will be remembered when people come to your funeral. I've noticed this. When people come to a person's funeral, the memories that they bring up were those things that happened, the impression that person made on me, something that took place, some kind deed that person did for me. Those are the things that will be remembered. How you treated them, that will be your legacy. You know, it's great this morning to see young people who are very focused. They know what they want to do. They know what career path they want to take. But within that career path will be people that you come in contact with. That will be the important thing. That will be the legacy that you will leave.